mean, that opens up a sort of a wider conversation here, because Chelsea are going through an interesting time at the moment. They have today been ruled out of the Nico Williams deal again by Fabrizio Romano. A few outlets have basically stated that they were interested. They were going to try and look to get involved with Arsenal and look to get involved with Liverpool. But Fabrizio has said that Chelsea and Nico Williams, no plan to activate the release clause or sign him confirmed. They believe his wages are going to be too high. They pulled out of Elise because they said the wages are going to be too high. And, you know, Sasnuk here sort of isn't happy with the way Chelsea are operating. Do you understand where this Chelsea fan and other Chelsea fans are coming from? That they're turning down Elise's, they're turning down Nico Williams's, they're turning down the players that have got higher profiles because of their money, but they're essentially going out there and they're buying this young Mark, I think it's pronounced GU, or GU from Barca. There's this £20 million on Amari Kellyman. That seems to be what they're aiming for this summer, as opposed to more tried and tested, established stars. Like, Dan, what do you make of this Chelsea approach?
Doesn't shock me one bit, Till. Doesn't shock me one bit. This ownership are a mess. Honestly, I've said it for a long time. I would be absolutely devastated to have these in charge of my football club. In my opinion, these are just an absolute madness. They are spending an unbelievable amount of money, and people think that's a great thing. But you need to have an understanding of what you're doing. Now, if they're going to go and buy another bunch of 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds, they are not going to improve on next season. They're just not going to. They need to go and get some top quality now that every single rival fan is going, oh, dear, that's not good news for us. Chelsea got him. Oh, that's not good news for us. Chelsea got him. Now, the young lad you've just said, me and Henry are looking going, who? Do you know what I mean? Why would we be worried about that? And then they're doing these deals with Villa and all that, trying to find loopholes and all that. That doesn't scare anybody. Yeah, that does not scare anybody. So I'm not saying that Chelsea are in a position to go and put a bid in for somebody like Kylian Mbappe. That's not what I'm saying. But the players that they should be bringing in my opinion, are ones that you think that's going to instantly improve them next level. Like they're walking straight in. Even if it was somebody like an Osimhen who comes in, you go, blimey, they've now got a killer up top. He's better than Nicholas Jackson. They go and get a winger like a Pedro Neto, and you think, oh, that's a baller. Absolute baller there. He's better than Sterling. You go and get somebody at the back that you think is an absolutely commanding centre-half, and you think, bloody hell, they've gone and got him now. That's nearly a spine already. They go and get Diogo Costa from Porto and put him in the back of their net. Like, that, to me, is scary. Not going and buying 23, 24-year-olds. The ownership, for me, I cannot understand the Chelsea fans that aren't writing on the pitch for this lot. This is a madness. This is not, in my opinion, Chelsea Football Club that I was jealous of for the best part of 2 decades. Now, I know a lot of that is Roman. Don't get me wrong. A lot of that is Roman Abramovich, the best football owner there will ever be, probably, right? But I look at it and I just think, what is happening at Chelsea then? Where is the plan? Is this Maresca going to do anything different to Poch? No, not in my opinion. But they clearly think he will. What is it that he's going to do that's different? When they've got their players fit, Chelsea, they've actually got an all right side. It's not amazing, but it's all right. If Reece James can stay fit, if Lavia can stay fit, if they get Wesley Fofana fit and back, they've got some good players coming back from injury, 100%. If Caicedo can show the form of Brighton and they can find something out of Enzo, they've got a potentially good midfield there. But I still don't see an amazing back line. I don't see a goalkeeper I rate. I don't see a creative midfielder. I see a midfielder that looks good for the defensive side of the game, but I don't see a creative midfielder there. Unless it is Gallagher, who I don't really think is this amazing creator. He's not an Odegaard, is he? Or a De Bruyne, or even a Maddison, or Bruno Fernandes. So there's some massive holes in that Chelsea side. If they're going to fill them with 21, 22-year-olds, I don't think it's the right thing. For me, we've got to be looking at those signings going, oh, yeah, that's a good sign. Wow, that's a good signing. Wow, Chelsea will be back. And I don't know that I'm going to see that, but I could be wrong.
I want to read something. Chelsea, a friend of mine is a Chelsea fan, doesn't do content or anything like that in our group chat with friends. And he said to me today, because my mates were bantering him saying, I weren't really involved. I was just sort of sitting there watching. And I said, I just asked him in the end, like, are you worried? And he turned around and went, no, we're buying some of the best young talent in the world. The ones that work out for us are going to make us top class again. And the ones that don't, we're going to flip them, make profit and reinvest it into the first team. So there's nothing for us Chelsea fans to worry about. That I've also seen that that's said by people that are very pro Clearlake, pro Todd Bowley. There's quite a few guys in our group chats that speak fairly similarly to that. Like, Henry, do you think there's truth to that? Do you think that this model of predominantly buying youngsters is eventually they're going to be left with a squad of 23 players that are, in 2 or 3 years' time are ready to deliver them Premier League titles? Or do you think that's just wishful thinking?
I think it's wishful thinking. I mean, Dan's camp here. You had rewind a few years ago. You had, other than a Florentino Perez, like Dan said, probably the most ruthless owner I've seen in my lifetime, where he bought the best, had the best, and won in practically everything. And they've now adopted this approach where they're getting understudies for understudies. Like, if we just take out Cole Palmer, Gallagher, and Gusto of that last season's team, now that Silva's gone, who is a shining light in that side? They're linked to 16-year-olds from Brazil that have played 13 appearances. They're now forking out £40 million for. Like, as I said yesterday on the Terrace, on the Top 6 show, this approach is fine for 2027, 2028. But in the short term, Chelsea have got to get back in the Champions League. Otherwise, the math's not mathing on the financial side of things. Like, Arsenal took out, transfer loans against their FFP so that they could go out and get a Rice, go out and get a Havertz, and they backed it up by getting in 2 title races, getting in the Champions League, and getting to the quarterfinals of a Champions League. Chelsea at the moment are going, okay, they finished 12th, and they finished 7th, got in the Conference League or whatever it was, finished 6th, but got in the Conference League. I don't see a short-term plan. The long-term plan, yeah, they're going to have all these 23, 24-year-olds that are going to be great in 3 or 4 years. But if Chelsea have another season again where they're around mid-table because they brought in a new manager, again, they should have stuck with Poch for me. And that's not because of my Tottenham links, but I think they just should have stuck with him. They've now brought in a new manager, and it's kind of like, what are we doing? Like, who have they signed in the last 2 years where you go, like Dan said, do you know what? I wish we signed that as a bloody great signing. They're linked with players that you've never even heard of. Like, I mean, I saw a video on TikTok yesterday that Chelsea are prepared to spend 200 million this window. That puts their spending nearly at 1.4 billion or 1.3 billion in the last 4 transfer windows, summer and January window. 1.4 billion, and the only shining light you've got is Cole Palmer. Like,
well, look, what I will say, like, in fairness to them, so I would say I think there's a player in Nkunku that if he can stay fit next year, they can get something out of. Caicedo is quality. There's no doubt about it. They've signed Tosin, and I think Tosin is a really, really good centre back in the making.
Yeah, Tosin's good, yeah.
In the making. So they have got some players. I think Cucurella started to show himself towards the end of last season. They've got Reece James and why am I now forgetting? Gusto. I sort of look at they do have some really good players, and there's some I probably haven't named that Chelsea fans will throw in. I don't think they've signed bad players. This young Willian lad they've signed from Brazil. I mean, Brazil are going crazy for him. This is a real talent.
There's no experience in there, though. There's no one to drag him through games.
And that's the one bit I would say. I'm still, and I ask this of Chelsea fans because I'm trying to be fair. It's not when they're saying, Terry, stop. No agendas. They have some really good players, Chelsea. There is no doubt that there is some really talented football players in this Chelsea squad. I'm not denouncing that. I don't even think it's debatable. I don't think it's debatable. They have some top talent in there. But please find me the examples of a very young squad being built with no experience around them, with an inexperienced manager that in 2 or 3 years turn. Because I know Chelsea aren't expecting to win the league this year, but Chelsea's goal has got to be to get back to winning league titles. So show me an example where that's happened. Or is there a plan next summer to start buying the experience? Because at some point you need it. And I can't think of examples where the youngsters have become the experienced players and it's worked.
There isn't one.
Interestingly, some Chelsea fans might throw Arsenal into that mix with what Arteta done, but they'll be the same Chelsea fans that will say, well, what's he done? He ain't won anything major since that first FA Cup. So at the moment, even Arsenal's model isn't an example that is going to yield the trophies that you're after. So that's my concern. And I think the conversations around Chelsea become so polarized. Their squad's crap. It isn't crap. Well, why are you saying they can't win? Well, because I think it lacks some experience. And it's just... it's a nuanced approach. So I'm very intrigued. Also, look, they could not shock us all, but they could go and sign 2 or 3 more experienced players later in the window, and everybody stops talking about it. But I think they have to add 2 or 3 more toss-in type signings that are a bit older, a little more experienced. I look at Ugarte United are looking at 23 years of age, young, but not a baby. I think they need a little bit more of that in their squad, Chelsea. I really, really do. The youngsters that they're buying, I mean, I don't know a lot about all of them, but I've read some good things. Like I read a scouting report on Kellerman from about 6 months ago. Like there's potential for this young man to become an absolute star. The young striker from Barcelona fans are fuming that he could be leaving. But it's about developing them all at the same time. And typically clubs have struggled to like develop more than 2 or 3 young youth players at the same time. How are you meant to do it with, I don't know, 10 to 15? That's what I'm concerned with. But I'm not a Chelsea fan, so I know they don't want the opinion sometimes. This year says, what does he say here? Matt says, I hate this ownership, but I understand what they are doing. Roman's model put us in £2 billion of debt, which we were lucky to he wrote off. Lost the loan army and need a new way to make profits. And I understand that logic. So the question I've got for you, Matt, is what's the end game and how long is it going to take to get there? So are you suggesting that they're going to do this for a number of years to raise more money so they can, in 4 years' time, build a squad that can win the league? And I'm not trying to be sort of disrespectful. I'm trying to understand what the plan is and how long they think it's going to take to develop a team that's going to be able to win the title. So I understand flipping the players. And I have said of the £1 billion you've spent, I've always said I reckon about £300 million of that has been purchased players that are never going to play for you, that you're just going to sell at a profit, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million pound profit in the years to come. So I agree with that element. But what's the time scale that you're putting on this as fans? I'd love to get your thoughts and your feelings on that, people. 700 million pounds in Arsenal still in phase 3. Yeah, but the difference, what I would say about Arsenal, and I know we're going to get onto their transfers in a minute, is that they are now looking more towards the established players to get them over the line. They're not going, right, we had a youth project, we nearly won. What we're going to do is just start signing more 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They moved on more to the Rices and co of this world. So I don't know if it's comparable. But yeah, they haven't won trophies yet. So I understand where you're coming from there. Hard to sign players on 10-year contracts. It's the last season for these owners, Terry. The fan base is 50-50 as of now. If this season is not a home run, the other 50 will turn. Do you guys think that? I mean, I don't know about the group chats you're in. We see a lot of this phrase in our group chats of, I've got to do my research on that player. My squad is good. I'm backing these owners. Do you feel if it's another bad season for them, Chelsea fans could absolutely revolt? And that's, by the way, from, is it Suski? I think that's how you pronounce it. My dyslexia kicked in last time, so I apologize, my friend.
Go on, Dan. I'll let you go first.
Listen, I mean, I believe that I don't know how to say his name either. I guess it's Suzuki. Is it Suzuki? I don't know what his name is, but big up to you, my bro. I actually am with you, man. I'm with you. I feel like the ownership. You're obviously against them, I guess. Anyway, from what I can read, I'm surprised that the Chelsea fan base have not united, and it doesn't seem like they can unite either. There's a lot of hatred within the Chelsea fan base against owners and against fans that are not for the ownership, fans that are for the ownership. And we had it at Arsenal quite heavily in the Wenger years, in the Kroenke out reign. And it was horrible, man. It was toxic. But we could never get to a decision as a fan base. We always had to have a villain, whether that villain was the Kroenkes or whether the villain was the fan base itself, or Red Action, or We Care Do You, or AFTV, or there was always somebody that was the bad person. And we had to have a villain that everybody hated or that everybody was pointing the finger at. And I wonder if it will get like that at Chelsea. My answer to that is probably that if it does, there won't be an agreement about what they want to do with the ownership. And so the ownership will just stay and continue to do what they do. I don't think there will be a 100% unanimous fan base. But I'm surprised there's not, because as far as I'm concerned, in the last 2 decades, Chelsea needs to be winning trophies, otherwise a failure. This is a football club that should be winning the Premier League title every year. And if they don't, they need to be disappointed. Not, well, 6th was all right because we're doing this young thing. And that is not recognisable for me growing up in the last 20 years watching Chelsea. Now, when I grew up, Chelsea was shit, like really crap. Like they didn't win anything. Yeah, when I grew up. They were awful. Yeah, they're a terrible football club. And then Roman came in, and then they become a very successful football club. That, for me, is where the standard should still be. So there's 25 years old that think Chelsea have been this magnificent club for decades. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. If they want to be like the old Chelsea, like they are now, stick with it. If they're happy with this, they're happy with 6th place, they think Europe is a massive success, your ownership is doing a very good job, if that is what you want as a football club. But I'm, as an Arsenal fan, pissed off that we've gone 20 years without winning a Premier League title. So I've put pressure on the manager and the ownership, and I haven't been alone on that for quite some time, or certainly in a minority for that. And Premier League title pushes isn't good enough for me. But if it is good enough for the fan, I'm not here to tell you how to, or police how you support your football club. But if that is what Chelsea fans want, to sneak into top 4 every so often and play young kids and be linked with the best Brazilian from 21-year-old from Brazil, your ownership is clearly doing a fantastic job then, because that's what they're doing right now.